I'm very excited to have Aaron Sorkin in the screening series, but this is actually the third time that I've interviewed him, and every single time there's a question that I want to ask him, and I keep forgetting to ask him, and tonight he brushed right on it, and it's driving me crazy. Of course, he's now retiring from writing. He's never going to write again, and I'm never going to be able to ask my question. I'm joking, of course. Maybe I won't be an idiot next time, and I'll remember to actually ask my question. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and yes, it's true, we have Aaron Sorkin with us tonight for a Q&A at our sold-out screening of Charlie Wilson's War, and we always feel bad about turning people away, so sorry about that, but it's Sorkin, man. Of course everybody shows up. And yes, my question that's been driving me nuts, it's not even a big deal, but it's something that's integral to his process. I know he's spoken about it before. I wanted to delve further in it. The question is, I'm just going to get it out of me, using researchers. When you're a screenwriter and you hire researchers, which is what Sorkin definitely did on The West Wing and even briefly talks about doing on Charlie Wilson's War, which of course would have been a great place for me to interject said question, but I'm an idiot and I didn't. But I'm really curious how he works with researchers, because what's so interesting about research is that it's very subjective as to what's interesting, what's filmic, etc. So I'm curious how he sifts through that data, and maybe one day I'll get to ask that question. Who knows? But we're very excited to have Sorkin with us tonight, and I think you're really going to dig the Q&A. And by the way, today's Creative Screenwriting Podcast is sponsored by the all-new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6. Movie Magic Screenwriter is professional screenwriting software used by top Hollywood screenwriters and TV writers. Stop by screenplay.com to test drive the new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6, and while you're there, read some free screenwriting articles and interviews with some of the most successful screenwriters working today. The all-new Movie Magic Screenwriter 6 is available at screenplay.com. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage of our sold-out screening right after I introduced Aaron Sorkin to discuss his new film, Charlie Wilson's War. First off, congrats. You got a lot of Golden Globe nominations ranging from Best Screenplay and Best Picture, so congrats on that.
Thanks a lot.
We're going to start moderated, then we're going to open it up to the crowd for a few questions. You're a uniquely American writer. I'm curious in your life how you went down this path. What was your first political experience, having interviewed you before? I believe it came at about the age of 11 or so and involved a girl.
It did. Now, this political experience that I had when I was the political experience you're referring to that I had when I was 11 is really the only political experience I've ever had. And I just want to make that clear. I'm in no way politically sophisticated. I have a bachelor's degree in theater, and just as it happens, I've written things that take place in the political arena for no reason other than there are good stories to be found there. But Jeff, what you're referring to is when I was in 6th grade, George McGovern was running for president against the incumbent Richard Nixon. There was a girl in my class who was a politically active named Jenny Lavin, and she was volunteering after school at the local McGovern campaign headquarters. So I thought it'd be a pretty good idea if I did too. So I went there and I was looking at envelopes, and they told us that this weekend they were going to put us all in a couple of buses and send us over to White Plains, which is a couple of towns over. It's the county seat of Westchester County, where I grew up, that the Nixon campaign motorcade was coming through, and that we were going to hold up signs that said McGovern for president and that kind of thing. So that's what I was doing because I had a crush on Jenny Lavin. And while I was standing there by the side of the street, a 143-year-old woman came up from behind me, grabbed a sign out of my hand, whacked me over the head with it, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it. So when I write movies that are about politics, the only political motivation that I have is the slim chance that this woman is still alive and that I'm driving her out of her mind.
I hope you are, or at least her children.
Yeah.
You just mentioned it. You have a conservatory training from Syracuse. You went there for theater.
Yeah.
How did that shape you as a writer, and when did you throw in the towel as Aaron Sorkin actor?
Well, I'm not sure I threw in the towel. One of these days, I'm going to walk on stage and show the world what I can really do.
Will you sing? I hope you'll sing.
No, what happened was I had been studying theater at Syracuse, and I had been really up until when I graduated from school when I was 21, all I thought I was going to be was an actor. I grew up in a suburb just outside New York City. I went to see plays all the time. My parents took me. It was just a matter of habit. That's when they were growing up, they went to see plays all the time. And I would see most things. I would read everything. When I was old enough, ninth grade or so, I would take my allowance on a Saturday or Sunday, take the train into the city. I wouldn't have enough left over for a theater ticket, even though then you could get a balcony seat on a Saturday or Sunday matinee for $5. But there wasn't enough. I was going to still need to make the round trip on the train. So I would second act a play, which means you stand out on the sidewalk until intermission when everybody kind of spills out to buy a soda, and you go back in with them and you watch the second act. So I think I've seen the second act.
I like that.
Yeah, of everything, and not the first act of a lot of things. But I came out of school, and a friend of mine, a guy I'd been friends with forever, who was starting to get work as a journalist, a freelance journalist, and he's now a for-real journalist, was going out of town for the weekend, and he had with him his grandfather's, what was called a semi-automatic typewriter. The keys were electric, and the return was manual. And he didn't want to schlep this typewriter out of town with him for the weekend. He asked me if I could hold on to it for him. And I said sure, but at the time I was living in my ex-girlfriend's apartment. I don't mean that now she's my ex-girlfriend. She was my ex-girlfriend then. We had broken up a year before. In fact, she was now going out with my best friend.
Sounds very complicated.
Well, this is everybody's salad days. This is what you do in your bohemian. For $50 a week, I got to sleep on the futon on the floor. She was out of town for the weekend because she was touring with the Care Bears. And there was the television was broken. It was one of these Friday nights in New York City where you're pretty sure everybody you know has been invited to a party you haven't been invited to. I didn't have $3 in my pocket, and there was nothing to do on this particular Friday. It's probably raining outside. There was nothing to do on this particular Friday night except put a piece of paper in this typewriter and see if I could entertain myself that way. And I started for the first time writing dialogue. Really, I started writing for the first time anything other than something to be gotten through for a homework assignment for school. I was writing for pleasure, and absolutely loved it and felt a confidence with it that I'd actually never felt before acting, and I was a pretty cocky actor. And just suddenly, it seemed like everything that I had learned in college, everything I had learned going to see all those plays, that had nothing to do with acting and everything to do with learning what a play was. And the other thing that kind of knocked me over to writing was this: the plays that my parents were taking me to see, many of them a little kid had no business being at. There was no way a kid could understand them. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf when I was 10, in that championship season when I was 11, and things like that. And I honestly did American Buffalo when I was 11. And I really didn't understand what was going on up on stage, but I loved the sound of dialogue. It sounded like music to me, and I wanted to, imitate what I had heard when I was growing up, and that's how I began writing.
You then did some short plays. You did a one act, right?
I did one short play, yeah.
And you acted in the one act with Nathan Lane. Is that correct?
I did, that was
hidden in the picture.
Hidden in this picture. What happened was I was looking for. I was writing the first play that I was writing was A Few Good Men, it was because my sister had been a lawyer in the Navy and had called me up one day and told me about something that was going on in a base we'd never heard of, Guantanamo Bay, and so I started writing it. But I wanted to do something right away to kind of get my foot in the door of professional writing, and it never occurred to me that if you come to Los Angeles, there are entry-level positions to be had in television as a writer's assistant or a staff writer, in films if you write a spec screenplay. It just I certainly had nothing against movies and television. I watched as many movies and as much television as anybody else. It just because I'd grown up on plays, it was really all I was thinking about. So in New York, we do have 3 or 4 or 5 one-act play festivals. They're kind of competitive. You submit your one-act play, and a certain number get chosen. They're pretty well produced, good actors and a good director. And mine was chosen. And also because at the time it was hard for me not to think of myself as an actor, I was going to act in it as well, and I did it with Nathan Lane. Partly because of Nathan, partly because also on this, it was 4 new one-act plays, and also on this bill of new one-act plays was a new one-act by Harvey Fierstein. Some high-profile critics came out, and they said nice things about me. So suddenly I had a literary agent, and he said, God, what else do you have? I said, I have this 25-character play, about a military court-martial. He read it, and he called me the next day, and he said, this is really good. I'm going to send it to our L.A. office, and I think I can get you work in television. Again, I don't know why I didn't just jump at that. It was a great thing he was saying to me, especially because I was a bartender at the time.
You wrote A Few Good Men on napkins, to my recollection.
I wrote A Few Good Men on... I tended bar, not in a regular bar. I tended bar at Broadway theaters. So where you're tending bar during the walk-in, the half hour before the curtain, and at intermission. And I wrote A Few Good Men on cocktail napkins during the first act of La Cage aux Folles. Which after the first 5 or 6 times I'd seen it, I reasoned I'd learned enough from it. I didn't have to watch it anymore. I can write my own thing, and I did. I would come home at the end of the night of work and kind of spill pockets full of cocktail napkins out on my desk. I would type it on my Mac 512K that I had. Would have been better off with the semi-automatic typewriter that I'd been using. So I said to my new agent, who said I can get TV work, gee, but what about the play? And he said, really nobody really does new plays anymore, and this you can only do on Broadway because of the size of it, and you're a kid and nobody's heard of you, so it's just not going to happen. The play's not going to be done. And incredibly, that very night, some of you may be familiar with a play called Tony and Tina's Wedding.
Great play, fully improvisational.
Yeah, you can. My agent, this is a former agent, represented the play, so he was just checking in with it that night, and was having a conversation with the development executive for a great man named David Brown. David Brown has a shelf full of Oscars, produced Jaws and Tora and The Sting and dozens of other great films, and he's a courtly guy, one of the last great gentlemen of Hollywood. He's married to Helen Gurley Brown. The two of them are an amazing couple. So my agent is speaking to the development executive for David Brown, who said, David just had a great time producing The Verdict. He really wants to do another courtroom drama. Do you know of anything? And by the way, if you know Tony and Tina's Wedding, you understand this conversation is taking place during the performance itself. You can do that. And my agent said, well, gee, I do have this play, and like that, I was called into David Brown's office. He said, I want to do this. Again, don't mistake this for courage. It was stupidity. I said, but David, have you ever produced a play before? And he said no, but I'm going to bring in my friend Robert Whitehead, which he did. Bob Whitehead, who passed away a couple of years ago, it really is a walking theater history textbook. In his career, he produced the Broadway debuts of Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, William Inge, and in a stunning anticlimax, me. And that's how the play got done.
I'm going to skip through a little because
Sure.
we know the history of that, and I just want to ask, because as A Few Good Men was made into a movie, it became a Castle Rock production. They had a great relationship with William Goldman, the legendary screenwriter, and he kind of mentored you. What was something important that you gleaned from Goldman? And I swear we're going to skip to this movie because I know we're limited on time. But
sure,
what was something as a mentor?
Bill did and continues to mentor me. He's a great teacher, and he's become a great friend. And I don't think I can answer your question any more specifically, but to say that Bill taught me everything I know about screenwriting and about 1/10 of what he knows about screenwriting.
Does he read your scripts? Does he give you notes?
Oh, he does read my scripts and talks to me about them a lot. Whether it's a movie or a television show or a play. I just had a play open a couple of weeks ago on Broadway.
The Farnsworth Invention.
The Farnsworth Invention. And,
I had tickets and was shut out because of the strike.
Because the stagehand strike is over. So anybody who's in New York, go see a play. You can see a play now. The stagehand strike's over.
Did he give you any notes on this movie that you could recall? Just we're big Goldman fans, obviously.
Nobody's a bigger Bill Goldman fan than I have. Bill has not yet seen this movie. I'm very nervous. He's going to be seeing it Friday night. He's not seen it yet.
All right. Send us an email. Tell us what happens.
Okay.
As you said, dialogue was your start. You'd watch Mamet on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote dialogue on the semi-automatic because no one could afford a full automatic typewriter.
Right.
What is your process for writing dialogue? Do you record it and play it back? Do you speak out loud like an actor would?
No, I wish I could. I can't dictate it. I do speak out loud, but not into a tape recorder. As a matter of fact, it's a very physical process for me. And if you were peering through my window at my office or at my house, you'd call a cop. You'd think I was going nuts because I'm playing all the parts. I'm jumping up and down. I'm all over the room. I'm basically trying to work myself into a lather to get some kind of energy and passion and argument going in the room.
Talk about your habit for a second. How important is outlining and note carding and stuff like that? Do you do it?
Yeah, I do it sometimes. Lately, I've been doing it more than others. But, I got to tell you, my process really is whatever it takes to get across the finish line. And if it just suddenly occurs to me that something good might happen if I stand on my head and chew gum, that's what I'm going to do. Lots of times I need to. I won't outline so much as use index cards on a cork board because I like being able to look at what I'm going to do, and I like, if I can, I'll work with a couple or sometimes more than a couple of researchers, and sometimes they'll do great research for me. But their value also is it's helpful for me to talk out loud. If I'm by myself, I really, unless I know what I'm going to write, ultimately you got to go in a room by yourself and write it. But during the process of the thinking of what you're going to write, which is the real struggle for me, and the thing that takes the longest, if I can talk out loud to people I like, who I can be friendly with, and we can bat around ideas, it's just the first step in sort of getting off your butt and doing it.
What do you do about writer's block if you get it?
I get writer's block a lot, and to me the real scary part about television, as opposed to doing a movie or a play, is listen. When I'm writing a screenplay, if I'm writing this screenplay, they'll indulge me that it's going to take a while, and if I've said I'm going to have it in, it's really feeling great, I'm going to have it in by the first of the month, and suddenly I have writer's block, something happens. I can call the studio, I can call the producer, I can call the director and say, I'm sorry, it's going to be another 4 weeks. You're going to have to bear with me. And they may not be happy about it, but they're going to have to live with it. With a television show, you can't do that, obviously. There are very hard deadlines. And so for me, the toughest thing about television is that you have to write even when you're not writing well.
Interesting. You're our cover for our January-February issue. Congrats on that.
Thanks very much.
And I've had a peek at the article. Good old Danny Munso, who interviewed you, said that since this was your first adaptation, you consulted with Akiva Goldsmith about
I did.
Beautiful Mind.
Yeah, this was the first time I'd done A Few Good Men was an adaptation, but it was an adaptation of my play, so I didn't count that. This is my first adaptation, also my first nonfiction. But I didn't know anything about adaptations. A good friend of mine is Akiva Goldsmith, who's great at adaptations, won the Oscar for A Beautiful Mind. And I said, Kiwi, can you help me out here? He said, yeah, the first thing you have to do is fall out of love with the book. Your job isn't to do a faithful adaptation of the book. Your job is to write a good movie. So I tried to do that.
I want to talk about the monologues in the movie for a second, because there's a few great ones. Talk about the Tom Hanks monologue about the dead dog and why he became a politician.
That was one of those...
Is that right out of the book?
Yeah. The story is right out of the book. I wrote it so that it could be spoken. But that was one of the things when I read it in the book. I knew, gee, this has to be in the movie. And I don't know any other way to do it than the worst possible way, which is a guy sitting there saying, let me tell you a story that's going to be important to this movie. I know there's no motivation for me to have to tell you this story. It's not like if I tell you this story, the building will stop burning down, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Trust me, it's going to pay off later. And the whole time writing the screenplay, it was a great story, and I knew I had to tell the story, but the whole time... before I got to that speech in the screenplay, I knew I'm coming to it, and I'm going to have to write it, and I did. But what tempered my concern about writing such a really such an expository speech was that I knew right after that was a scene that was going to work in the movie, which was when I had devised the first meeting between Gust and Charlie in the office, and Charlie is talking to Gust about needing to find a weapon that can shoot these helicopters down, while at the same time he's learning that he's the target of a cocaine investigation, and that
which was a great scene.
Yeah, and I knew that it was going to be a fun sort of Marx Brothers scene to do, and that it was going to be helpful for a lot of reasons. One of the things that Bill talks about, and by the way, there's a great book that William Goldman wrote. Even if you're not interested in screenwriting, it's a great fun read. It's called Adventures in the Screen Trade. It's wonderful. You'll really laugh. He's a great storyteller.
Even the sequel, Which Lie Did I Tell, is great.
Even the sequel, Which Lie Did I Tell? And if you like his nonfiction, by the way, there's that. There's The Season, which is basically his take on Broadway, examining all of Broadway using the 1968-1969 Broadway season. And there's also a book he wrote called Hype and Glory, which is... there was one year, a few years ago, where he was a judge at the Cannes Film Festival and a judge at the Miss America pageant in the same year. And he uses that to tell a lot of stories.
Back to the monologues for a second. Another great monologue. Writers have gotten really lazy about character introductions. I think the introduction of Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in this film is one of the finest of the year.
I appreciate that.
Talk about that monologue and that scene, because it's another monologue where he really tells us about himself, but it's in the midst of a heated argument.
Yeah, I found that if you can get two characters in a room arguing about something, anything, the correct time of day, you're going to put yourself in a good place to succeed. So that's what I wanted to do. I had read in the book that Gust felt cheated because he wasn't given the Helsinki station post job. The following things are what I got from the book. The fact that he told his boss twice to go fuck himself on two different occasions, and that as a result of those things and some other more fundamental things like his blue collar background, his ethnicity, just the fact that he wasn't then cut from the CIA mold of a more Ivy League thing, that he was very much an outcast at the CIA. So I wanted to introduce him like that, and again, I wanted to use a fight, so it'll be about why didn't I get the Helsinki station chief job, and maybe if I write this well enough, if I really get it going, it will be a good introductory scene. So I'm glad it worked out.
And the breaking glass was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Another monologue that had a setup and payoff, which was absolutely amazing, was the story of the Zen master. I was really blown away by it. I thought it worked great. When did that idea come along, and when did you decide to split it up in the narrative the way you did?
The idea came along the moment that Mike gave it to me, and that was all Mike. Honestly, the only thing I could take credit for is saying, God, Mike, that needs to be in the movie. We were sitting at his house and during a work session, and we're both trying to articulate what the movie is about. Because it's become clear to me that this is important to Mike, that he needs to be able to say it to himself, that he needs to be able to write it down, he needs to be able to say it to an actor, he needs to be able to say it to a DP. He needs to be able to say what this movie is about. And we're both trying different things and kind of getting ourselves revved up. And he said, a long time ago, Mike had to flee Germany when he was 6 years old because of the Nazis. And a long time ago, I remember, I think, a grandparent telling me, do you know the story of the Zen master and the little kid? And I said, no. And he told me the story, and it took him 12 seconds to tell, and that's what the movie's about. And that somebody has to say that. So honestly, all I did was type that story.
You told Danny Munso in our article that there was an original scene towards the end that was a bit more connected with 9/11, the modern state of the world, that was cut. Could you tell us about it and your decision to cut and restructure your ending?
Well, I will. I think, and this will be the first time I do, just because I've been getting asked this question now for a couple of weeks since we started press. Because now, in the age of the internet, it's the process is a little more transparent than I think the filmmakers would like it to be. In other words, you get to look at earlier drafts of what I'm doing. And yes, there was, not just in the original script, in every script, in the shooting script, there was an epilogue which was shot and ultimately cut in the editing room. There nothing on this movie came close to the number of hours spent debating that scene.
What was the scene?
Hundreds of hours. It was an epilogue. The scene was 45 seconds long. We ended with that scene in the committee room where he's not able to get $1 million now. Everybody's forgotten about Afghanistan, and Gust has warned him, that this is really dangerous over there. We go to black. Epilogue comes up on the screen. Charlie, who's got kind of salt and pepper hair now. Some time has gone by. It's early in the morning. He's just come back from an AA meeting. He's married to his wife, Barbara. They're joking around a little bit. They're looking at the headlines. There's a reason why in the scene with Emily Blunt, I have him lay out what you can see from that balcony. The Jefferson Memorial, the Iwo Jima Memorial, the Pentagon. And in the middle of making a joke about how Gary Condit didn't do himself any favors with Connie Chung last night on the report, there is just a jarring blast. Neither of them have any idea what's just happened. He assumes a gas main has blown underneath the building. He's going to run across the hall to check on Mrs. We never hear the last name because his wife, Barbara, who's standing on the terrace, shouts, "Charlie, come here. The Pentagon's on fire." All this time, the phone is ringing, and Charlie is walking out to the terrace. The wife picks up the phone and says, "Charlie, it's Gust." He says, "Turn on the TV," and we go to black. Like I said, tremendous amount of debate about this scene.
What was the con? Why cut it?
Two reasons. One was, first of all, a member involved in this discussion was Charlie himself, who we respected what he had to say, but it didn't. His wish for the end of the movie was different than the filmmaker's wish, which was he was simply concerned, not that people think he was responsible for 9/11, but he didn't want people to think Afghans were responsible for 9/11, which they weren't. The filmmaking reason to cut it, and we screened it a couple of times with that ending in, and even after the people, and these were very smart people at the screening, said, it was Soderbergh and people like that said, God, you know, for an hour and a half you do this movie where you're raising all kinds of interesting, complicated questions, and then you seem to ruin it right at the end with what appears to be a very simple answer, which honestly wasn't my intention. It was just, I felt like I wasn't really sure why we told the story if it doesn't end there. By the way, I should say I've never been so happy to be proven wrong in my life, because I think I think that the other reason there was kind of heat to cut it was I think that would have been the only scene people were talking about. I don't think.
So that was where the bookend idea came about, and then the
that's right. Okay. And like I said, I think that what happens is you're able to connect the dots all by yourself, and unless there was a particularly unique, elegant way to shoot the very pedestrian scene I just described to you, we were probably smart. 9/11 is radioactive when it comes to dramatizing it.
A few questions from the crowd really quick. Right there in the middle, you, ma'am, in the glasses. Was there any thoughts about showing the fact that Osama bin Laden was trained and armed with the Mujahideen?
Well, the truth is Osama bin Laden didn't get to Afghanistan until several months after the last scene, actually. He was there after, he got there after the Russians retreated. I never mentioned bin Laden in a screenplay. What I did do is there, in a scene that we see in a CIA committee room where they're discussing who's going to get the guns. They're going through various rebel groups, and the Mike Vickers character says, there's a group that we really like a lot. They're well organized. They can fight. We want to give them X million dollars. They call themselves the base. In Arabic, that translates to Al-Qaeda. Again, it was just a moment somehow that blew your head off when you heard it. And we felt like, you know what, if you're going to do that, be absolutely sure. I wasn't in that meeting that I wrote about. I made up that meeting. There were lots and lots of meetings like that. And it's okay to do that, but once you invoke the name Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, anything like that, you're pretty much ensuring that the discussion about the movie is going to be about things you'd rather not have it be about.
Another question right here, you sir in the front row. Question was in regards to the concept the film promotes about entering without an end game.
Yeah. I'll answer. I just want to remind you again that when it comes to Iraq, I have no sophistication and couldn't possibly. It certainly seems like a mistake that we made a huge mistake that it's going to take a long time to correct. But yes, first of all, the theme of the movie is what you said, that you can't just go in, win the shooting war, and then go about your business. There's a very serious war to be won at that point. But also that things aren't black and white. I was struck when I read the book. Obviously the book, the movie, it's sort of one giant ironic statement, the whole thing. But I was struck when I read the book how often the vocabulary that they were using back then about it's a war of good versus evil, it's as simple as good versus, just a simple case of good versus evil, is exactly the way that we were just talking a few years ago. Like everybody here, I recognize evil when I see it. It's just that it's not a simple case of it, as we're experiencing in Iraq.
And of course, you need to plan for an end game. You, sir, in the second row. Why the title of What Kind of Day It's Been?
The last episode of the first season of Sports Night, the last episode of the first season of West Wing and Studio 60 were all titled "What Kind of Day Has It Been?" What kind of day has it been is a phrase. It's literary code for let's look and see where we are so far. And so it's just become my habit at the end of a first season of a TV series. I hope I have another first season of a TV series someday. So I'll bother you again with that.
Are there any plans at the table to return to television?
Well, first thing we have to do is end the strike.
That was going to be my next question, but will you return to television?
I love television. I love writing television. I love being a showrunner. I love working with the same group of people every week. I love the immediacy of television. If you write a screenplay and everything goes great and everything went as well as it possibly could on Charlie Wilson's War, if I write a joke today, I'll hear the laugh a year and a half from now. With television, something's going to be on TV 6 weeks from now that I haven't thought of yet. And as scary as that is, it's awfully exciting. So as soon as the strike is over, and of course as soon as I have an idea, I'll get right back to you.
Talk about the strike for a second. What have your strike duties been? Have you been picketing? If so, where? And what are your thoughts on it?
I've been picketing. I was picketing in New York because I was there for several months with the play and was in the unique position for 3 weeks of striking and being struck against by the stagehands. The stagehands had shut down Broadway for close to 3 weeks. Obviously, the Writers Guild strike has shut down film and television. And I just kept thinking, God, if the projectionists go on strike before Charlie Wilson opens, that'll fill out my bingo card. And I've asked my parents for my allowance again.
Do you see any end in sight? What are kind of some of the conversations you've been in with people on both sides?
I don't know anything more than anybody else does. I don't get inside scoop. I think, like a lot of you, one day you'll hear something very optimistic that I hear it's going to be settled by Friday, and then Friday will come and I hear it's going to be another few months. All I know for sure is that it's absolutely brutal. Not just, it's brutal enough for the writers, but I have to say I feel very bad for the people who it kind of hits first. The carpenters, electricians, painters, seamstresses, that kind of thing, who are all out of work. Assistants are out of work. Waiters and waitresses are out of work. You realize when there's a strike in this town, you quickly realize how much this is a company town. And that all we do here are make movies and TV shows. So when something like this happens, it's incredibly bad, and I just wish that the 10 smartest people on both sides would get into a room and figure out how to end this. There's got to, it's math. There's got to be a place in the middle that we can end up at, and we ought to.
Absolutely. You've been very generous with your time. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Thanks again to Aaron Sorkin for spending time with us to discuss his new film, Charlie Wilson's War. And there actually was one question that I forgot to ask during the Q&A, which I was able to get an answer to right before we signed posters. So stay tuned and you'll hear that in just a moment. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software, because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. As for the other question that I didn't get to ask, and I hope this isn't too much lead up, because really it's just a straightforward question. If you've seen the movie, you notice that in the third act there's a sequence that has a lot of statistics and archival footage, and it's kind of their way of showing a passage of time. My curiosity was about whether or not such a passage of time sequence was in the original screenplay, or was something that they constructed during post-production. And if so, if the concept came during post-production, did Sorkin write it? I know, pretty straightforward, but still, man, you can't blame a brother for asking.
Wasn't replacing anything. After looking at the cut for several months, we were just concerned that we weren't effectively conveying the build-up and the defeats of the Soviets and how well these guys were doing. So I came up with an idea that's never been used before. Why don't you put it right on the screen and just kind of have this running tally? And I like the graphic that they chose. It made it seem original.
Cool. All right, let's sign some posters. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.